since we've done a night shoot, eh? This wasn't expected. I didn't expect to be here. I was going to spend a quiet night in, and then saw this on the in-demand station and said, what the hell? You know, it's sometimes not easy being me. I know. You look at me and you say, well, that guy clearly has it all. He's devilishly handsome. He's incredibly talented. He has a killer girlfriend. Why, that man has it all. And in many ways, you're right. But, you know, there is another side of it. It's not easy to be the naysayer. It's not easy to be the guy that things don't touch, you know? While everyone else cheers and weeps at every Pixar movie, you're the guy sitting in the back going, When everybody says, oh, the first 15 minutes of Up, and you're saying, yeah, what about the rest of the movie? And then people come at you with, oh, you're doing it on purpose. Why would I be doing it on purpose? It doesn't give me any joy to feel like the entire world is laughing at a joke that you're not in on. And such was it with the news of this film. When it was announced that Alex Winter was going to come out of hibernation and team up with Keanu Reeves to do a third Bill and Ted movie, the Gen Xers among us rejoiced. It was all over social media. Yay! Here are the first stills. Here's the first publicity shot. Yay! And I don't blame any of them. Bill and Ted were a vital part of my childhood. How's it going, Royal Ugly Dude, was one of the first lines that made me laugh so hard I farted. But there was this feeling in the pit of my stomach of, this isn't going to go well. And you know, as Jeff Goldblum once said, boy, I hate being right all the time. Look, folks, I hate to rain on people's parades, especially now. Especially in the year 2020, because we are reaching for every sliver of joy that we can get our measly little hands on. But I have to be honest with you. This film was painful. It was so hard to get through. Now, the question that I have to ask is, why is this Gen X nostalgia property, reintroduction, reboot, continuation, whatever you want to call it, any different from the previous one of last year, which got fairly high praise from me, that being Jay and Silent Bob Reboot? On the surface, these films seem identical, or at least identical in the DNA. You know, it's a Gen X, Gen Y nostalgia property about two idiots who were funny because they were idiots, now seeing how characters like that age. Yeah, how do Bill and Ted function as adults? Kind of is the same question of how Jay and Silent Bob would function as adults, and what is going to be the big difference between them. Because, again, Reboot I liked a lot. I gave that a lot of praise. Unfortunately, this film I can't, and I think it's the devil's in the details with this one. So let's talk about those details. First off, where Jay and Silent Bob succeed is that the characters that they play remain consistent and yet logical in their continuation film. What I mean by that is, Jay and Silent Bob were stupid, but they were stupid for a reason. They were uneducated, they were stoners, you know, they were burnouts, hence their stupidity, and their charm came from when the good in them outlived the bad, or when they would see past their worst tendencies to do something good. That's where the charm of Jay and Silent Bob came from. In their continuation, we see that, yeah, being a stoner in your 20s and all that, yeah, that may be funny, but it's kind of pathetic when you're in your 40s. You know? So Jay and Silent Bob remain consistent, but they remain consistent within the logic of their universe and their film. Bill and Ted were idiots, but they were always good-hearted idiots. They were not malicious. They weren't even really that stupid. They showed from the whole purpose of the first film is that they could learn. You know, they weren't uneducatable. They were intelligent to a point. And they always had their better nature right on the surface. There was never anything they had to break through or overcome aside from, you know, self-doubt and the doubt of the world around them. So, what they do in this film is Bill and Ted are exactly the fucking same. They are still the same idiots that they were in the first two movies. And that does not work. It does not work to have Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter acting like teenagers from the 80s while they're in their 40s and 50s. Because at some point you look at these people and you wonder how in the fuck did they function in society. I'm not saying that they had to change completely. I'm not saying they had to, you know, make them bitter old men and, you know, totally be untrue to the characters. What I'm saying is that they needed to grow up a little bit. They needed to grow up a little bit. And we're going to come back to that point here in just a second. Whereas with Jay and Silent Bob, because Jay and Silent Bob, Jay Mewes and Kevin Smith, are essentially just playing themselves, they're able to slip right back into the Jay and Bob characters and idiosyncrasies. I mean, it's basically just them with the volume turned way up, which is, you know, ironic for Silent Bob. The problem here is that whereas in the original two, and the first one especially, and it was still there in the Bogus Journey, Reeves and Winter slipped so naturally into those characters. Playing those guys, it didn't feel like they were putting on an act. In fact, they did it so well that lovable idiot persona has followed Keanu Reeves for a lot of his career. That's been the stereotype that he's been blacklisted with, because he did it so well and so effortlessly that people thought that was actually him. It wasn't until things like Speed and The Matrix where he was able to break out of that. And even then, you know, people, whoa, you know, people still wouldn't give him his due. But that was back when they were the age of the characters and of the generation of the characters. Now, trying to play the exact same cadences and line readings and everything as, you know, 40 and 50-year-old men, it feels so forced. And that's the thing about this movie. I think overall, it's so forced. Every line, every piece of acting, and there are good actors in this movie. I think I said that already. But I'll say it again, there are good actors in this movie. Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter are good actors, and they're surrounded by other good actors. But man, every line feels so forced. They don't slip naturally back into it because Bill and Ted have not been allowed to change. They've not been allowed to change. And that leads us to the second major difference between Jay and Silent Bob reboot and this film. Jay and Silent Bob reboot, as it is with all of Kevin Smith's work when he's on point, it had something to say. It had a point to it. There were reasons it was being made outside of, I just want to make another movie with my friends. All right. Jay and Silent Bob take the premise of these two guys still being stoner losers in their 40s and uses that as the driving force of the entire film as they look at their lives and how everyone else has moved on and grown up and they are still right where they were. It uses that as the basis and the driving force behind Jay's relationship with his newfound daughter. And the fear of his commitment to get with her because he's afraid he's already screwed up everything in his life. He's just going to screw this up too. The desire to do better by her, and the fact that it actually makes him grow up to a point. Again, it's a Jay and Silent Bob movie, so none of this is like super serious. But the point I'm trying to make is it had a point. I don't know what the point of this movie is, outside of Bill and Ted are back. Aside from that, it has no point. It's not saying anything. And because it has nothing to say, not about Bill and Ted as characters, not about the world that they're in, not about the way their lives have changed, because it has nothing to say, this comedy just comes off flat and ridiculous. And that's the problem. You see, the original Bill and Ted was such a high concept 80s what the fuck. It was a movie that could only have existed in the 80s. And I know it came out 89, towards the end there. But still, it's a film just by its very concept that could only have existed in the 80s. But they committed fully, and they had something they were trying to say. About living your dreams, about living up to your potential, about being more than what people assumed you were going to be, about being better, about making your dreams come true, and so on and so on. This movie, it tries to have the idea of, their daughters are actually the ones that write the song. Spoiler alert, don't care if you can't figure that out from the first 5 minutes like I did. You might want to go have a CAT scan done because something ain't firing right in your brain. It tries to have that. But it just doesn't work. And the two girls playing the daughters, one of whom was the star of Ready or Not. So I know she's a good actor, but again, all they're doing are just really, really bad Bill and Ted impressions. You know what it reminds me of? I don't know if this is an old reference. Like, what a shock. Does anybody remember back when Family Matters was on the air? They had a contest to see which kids in America could do the best Urkel impression. And those kids, they had appear on an episode of Family Matters in a dream sequence where they played Steve Urkel's and Laura Winslow's hypothetical children. And that's what this reminds me of. It reminds me of who can do the best Bill and Ted impression, enter the contest, get to play the daughters. And again, I know the two actors are way better than this. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying their characters don't have characters of their own. They're just bad imitations of what we've seen before. So we can't even really connect with them as characters. They're not a reflection of modern teenagers. They're not. So therefore the film can't even say anything about, modern music or kids' relationship to their parents, or the what's it like being the children of faded rock stars. It can't. Think of this. This is what I was thinking throughout the film. And again, I don't want to change the Bill and Ted characters. I don't want to make them unlikable. But what if instead of this movie just being a kind of, yay, Bill and Ted again, what if they were actually trying to say something about the fear of not living up to your potential? Midlife crisis. You know, again, I hate to bring it back to Kevin Smith all the time, but he's the closest comparison to this film I can think of. That is why the View Askew films work so well when they work so well, is they follow Kevin Smith's emotions about what he's going through at that stage of his life. For instance, getting off of reboot, let's go to Clerks 2. A film about two guys in their 30s looking at their life and saying, you know, how did we get here? You know, are we ever going to move forward? Do we want to move forward, or are we happy where we are? It had something to say about people of that age in that situation, which I was one of, so it really spoke to me. I'm not saying this film had to, you know, chuck all the comedy, chuck the lovable characters, chuck the fun feel to take on this dour, you know, mindset. But I am saying it needed to have a point, and it doesn't. The first two movies had a point. And they had a point and had some really brilliant ideas, some original concepts, some fun characters to help explore those ideas. It's something I tell my theater kids a lot, and they don't believe me. Everything you direct, everything you write, there needs to be a reason behind it. It doesn't have to be a big reason. It doesn't have to be a life-altering reason, but there needs to be a reason. And I don't see the reason here. I'm beating a dead horse. And I don't want to. This gives me no joy. It's more, for me, a kind of a sad, you know, just a sad kind of task I've got to do. And I knew I was going to have to do it from the minute I saw these, you know, the first press releases, or when they said they were going to make this movie. Because, as I've said, if you watched my show at all, if you've seen Forgotten Gems or any of those others, I've said it a billion times, and I'll say it a million more. Some things are just products of their time. And if you feel like you have to bring them into the modern day, then that means they have to adapt to that modern day. Doesn't mean, you know, look at Rocky. Rocky adapted for every decade he was in. The character didn't change, the themes didn't change, but the world around them did, and how they react to that world around them also changed. That's all I'm saying. And I wish that there had been more to this than just Bill and Ted are back, because quite frankly, that is not a joke to hang an entire movie on. It's a lot like, I'm not going to say I didn't laugh at all during this. There were a couple of chuckles, but it was kind of like the Big Thorbowski from Avengers Endgame. It was funny for like 5 minutes, and then you realized that this was just going to keep going. And it lost it real fast. So, I'm rambling. It's been a long time since I've done one of these right off the cuff, as opposed to having a day or two to analyze and think about what I was going to say. So it feels weird compared to Forgotten Gems. I think I said this during the Scoob review as well. But we got to get to it. We got to get to grading. It's you know, it's apropos. School's going to start up for me next week. I should get back in the habit of grading, and I'm afraid. Oh, I don't want to say this. I really don't want to say this, but I gotta be the enemy of every kid in the 80s and early 90s, because I have to be Bill and Ted's history professor, and I gotta give this film an F, and I'm not doing the sign language correctly, because I've forgotten, because it's been so long. I have to refresh myself, but I've got to give it an F, guys. I'm sorry. It just... it just hurt. It just hurt. And it hurts even more to have to say to a franchise that you love, not loved in the past tense, but you love, and say, guys, I gotta put you down. So, you know, it's not enough. It's not enough that 2020 has given us every other piece of shit that's happened. They could have at least given us some good movies. I look back at the very few, you know, new releases I was able to review this year, and they all suck. So many of them were horrible and continue to be just lackluster. You think if God of whatever, if you were going to blight us, you could have at least given us some good movies. Oh, Lord. So the year rolls on, my friends. The year rolls on. Maybe there's hope on the horizon. Who knows? The way it's coming, maybe that light at the end of the tunnel is the train coming. I'm not the first person to make that joke at all, but it's apropos. Let's hope there are some good new releases coming out, and if not, that's why we have Forgotten Gems. So, whatever the case, Drive Home Reviews will be here. So, thank you for joining us. It's good to be back. And as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.